Hey everyone, thanks for joining for another episode of the Brilliant Ones podcast. Super excited. I got a special guest with me, Jay Veal, CEO of
Hey,
Inc. Education. Jay, welcome.
hey, appreciate it. Appreciate the welcome and appreciate me being here today. I'm glad to spread something that's valuable to everybody.
Yeah, man. And you're doing a lot of great things in the community, man, with
Yes,
all
sir.
the businesses that you have going on.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
super excited to dive into like what you're doing with
Yes, sir.
Inc.
Yes, sir.
Education, the Veal brand.
Yes, sir.
But first, we're here in Dallas, Texas,
Hmm.
right? I know you were telling me a little bit before the show. You're not from Dallas, so
Right.
give me the background. How'd you end up in Texas?
Yeah. So originally from Northeast to LA. My parents in San Bernardino. My parents were retired military, so I spent like all that time, moving around a lot. Georgia Air Force Base. I don't know if it's defunct at this point. I believe it is. Back in Apple Valley, and so I was born in that area, right? And then spent time, going to school in Cali. Growing up in Cali, and then I eventually moved to Japan. Lived in Japan for 3 years. Learned Japanese at that time. I don't know it anymore, but learned Japanese then. Went to school. Part of my elementary school journey was there as well in Kadena, Kadena Air Force Base in Okinawa,
Mm.
and spent some time, in other Asia countries, and then also came to Arizona. Spent time in Arizona for a while, and then came to Texas. Actually, my last year of high school, I moved to Texas. I left everybody. It was did my high school, the 3 years of high school in Arizona. My last year, my mom was actually coming to Texas. My dad was still in Arizona at the time, so they retired 1 year after and one another. And so he actually eventually moved after we kind of moved to Dallas. And so she retired from the military and then got a job at Microsoft. And then so Microsoft is out here in Las Colinas area in DFW. And so we moved here. At that time, I had just turned 16. I was a freshman in high school at 12. And so I just turned 16, graduated, and landed in Dallas. And then I did my time there, went to school at the Naval Academy in Annapolis and DMV area, and then came back to Texas for my master's. And then I ended up working at Microsoft and other companies and stuff like that. So that's kind of how I ended up back in Texas.
Wow.
Yeah.
How do you like how's life in Dallas?
Um, Dallas is cool. Eventually, in the beginning, I was like, man, everybody has the same thought in Dallas, like in Texas, like, am I gonna go and I'm gonna see a whole bunch of people riding on horses going to work?
Right.
And that's what I thought when I first came here, as an ignorant standpoint. But until I got here and saw the vibe of how Dallas is, I was like, oh, it's not that bad. It's a big city. They back then they didn't have as much going on as they have now, especially in the entrepreneurship space and in the black and brown community space. As far as who's starting businesses, millennials, right? Is it the city to come to actually start things, build relationships, right? If you're gonna date somebody, you have to look at that too, right? All those things in a melting pot that Dallas was kind of how they evolved up until today, right? Now you got Dallas is like the hottest in everything. You got best place to live at, as a millennial. You got the best place to buy real estate. They got the best housing market, although housing is crazy right now with the whole interest rate situation.
Yeah.
And rentals is out of this world right now. Apartment prices. But Dallas has become like the hot place that everybody wants to move to, that corrupt corporations want to move to. Everybody wants to make money here. Everybody wants to live here, and everybody wants to settle down here. So eventually, we're gonna have to start building up. But the land is so wide here that it's not necessarily an issue. But the environment's cool. The startup scene still has work to do. You mentioned Austin a while earlier. Austin is a good startup hub, but I think that for different types of startups like ed tech and other type of startups, fintech and things like that, there's a lot of still work to do in this particular area too. So,
Right.
mhm.
No. And so going back to just growing up, in
Mhm.
various different cities,
Mhm.
did you always have that entrepreneur spirit?
So you know what? It's funny. I never saw myself in the entrepreneurship space when I was younger, or even in high school, or even in college. Like it wasn't even on my radar. I was
Yeah.
just like, I want to be an engineer. Growing up, I wanted to be a chemical engineer. Then I moved it from chemical engineering to biomedical engineering. Then I moved from biomedical engineering to computer engineering. And I moved from computer engineering to like systems engineering. But when I graduated, I ended up having a minor in mathematics, and I did so much. Starting off a computer engineering major, then I went off to information systems with a minor in math. So I graduated with all of this knowledge in engineering, business, and then tech. And so it all like related me to like, in B school, I was able to learn so much, that I'm able to start my own company. So eventually when I was tutoring and things like that, I was like, well, now it's time to kind of make this something official. And then when I started, tutoring and ink education, well, back then it was called ink tutoring. It's kind of when I was able to put all that knowledge into play and action, right? There's a lot of talk in Dallas and other cities that I want to do this, I want to do that, but people don't move the foot to the fire and their feet to the fire and make action happen and do impact until movement starts to happen. And that's where, I kind of got my feet a little bit wet in the entrepreneurship space. And then when I started the company, I knocked door to door. I was your real grassroots, hey, my name is Jay Veal, I'm starting ink education or ink tutoring. These are the things that we tutor in. Here's what I do. If you want to use me, great. If you don't have a use for me, here's my card. Here's somebody else that might be able to utilize tutoring. And I kind of did it like that, right? Did that for a whole year. Eventually, I ended up going to a lot of Black enterprise conferences, and that's where I first met the senior producer for Tom Joyner Morning Show and the senior producer for Steve Harvey's show. And I ended up tutoring their kids in math at first. And then eventually Black Enterprise ended up writing an article about kind of what we were doing in the education company. And then it kind of spread like wildfire. So then it was client after client, media after media, and then to where we are today, which is 85 people strong. We're in we have people on ground, on foot in 6 cities, Dallas, Fort Worth, Chicago, New York, Atlanta, Houston, Austin, and I want to say we have people in DC too. We're a 15-time award-winning brand now, and we're the top Black-owned tutoring brand and education company in the U.S. at this point.
Wow. No, that's impressive.
Mm-hmm.
And you was featured in Forbes too as well.
Yes. We were the first Black and brown education and tutoring company to ever make the Forbes list in history.
Yeah. No, that's
for the impact specifically of Black and brown students.
Yeah. No, that's great. So going back to when you first started the company, this is what, 2015?
Yes, sir. Middle of 2015, so about July, end of July-ish.
And so what led up to this point that you wanted to start your own tutoring business?
So my original background was in the IT and tech space. I worked at Microsoft as a technical account manager. I worked at Baylor Healthcare IT and healthcare IT and network engineering. Worked in T-Mobile, Verizon, all these other tech companies and telecom companies. And then 2008, it's crazy. Like, how you just sit somewhere and you just like not necessarily meditating per se, but you just quiet. You just listen, right? And you have to listen to God's sound. And for anybody that's religious, whatever you believe in, but
right.
I'm a Christian.
Yeah,
I'm a Baptist Christian. So for the powers that be, I heard this voice. It was like, you need to be in education. And I was like, what? How, Sway? Like, why? Like that. My background is IT and tech. I grew up in it. Both my parents were in tech. My mom worked at Microsoft and other tech. My mom and dad both did tech in the military. Like, my dad was in tech, was big in tech. Like, so my trajectory was to go in tech. You know what I'm saying? And I was good at it. But when I heard that voice, like, my life changed. You know what I'm saying? And there's two places where my life changed in my life. The moment I heard that word and that voice. And, I have a 17-month-old daughter now, so that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But that also changed my life, right? So in the world of hearing God, like I was just trying to figure out what I needed to do next. And I said, okay, cool. Well, if I need to be in education, but I was right in a job I had just got literally 3 months ago before I heard that voice, right? Told the guy, I was like, hey, I don't know how to tell you this, but I gotta leave the job. He was like, what? Like, he graduated from UT. It's not funny, in Austin. And he was an operations manager. He was like, what? Like, I just hired you. Like, how you gonna do that to me like that? I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. I just listen to God's voice. I gotta do it. I gotta listen. So I listened. I left my job at that time. I moved forward, enrolled in a alternative certification program to teach, and then went to Dallas ISD and finished off that program, and then started teaching. I actually first year of teaching in 2008 was when I first started. I went back to go teach at my alma mater, which is Townview Science Engineering Magnet High School here in Dallas, right? I graduated number 3 in my class at that school and got like $385,000 worth of money to go to school. So I didn't have to pay for none of my degrees, right? So then I went back to go teach a very unique class called Fast Track Mathematics, which if you're not familiar with the educational landscape, it's teaching freshmen 3 years of pre-AP math in 1 year. The way that's accomplished is we teach the freshmen the whole year of pre-AP geometry in a regular calendar academic year. And at the same time, you teach them the whole year of Algebra 2 first semester. You flip it, second semester, teach them the whole year of pre-cal, second semester. But you have those same group of kids, first period and 8th period every day for an hour and a half. That's how it was done. First year out the gate teaching, all my kids got 100% perfect scores on the state exam first year teaching out the gate. Then I went to, did my next 3.5 years in different school districts, Duncanville, Uplift Education Charter School System, and Cedar Hill ISD, and did all that. And then I became one of the only black male educators in the city of Dallas who taught all the math in high school between algebra to AP calculus, BC, regular pre-AP and AP levels, all in 4 years with an 85 to 100% success rate. Then I became the top tutor that's black male in Dallas after that as well. So it kind of just spiraled into where it's at now. And then I became an instructional coach. I taught teachers for a couple of years for math, was a district level administrator over 7 schools for STEM instructional coaching, was a math interventionist with SPED students, and then an adjunct professor at a university for 4 years. So I've done everything in ed, basically, besides be a principal and superintendent.
So leading up to this point, you did
that
all
led
this,
to the company being built.
And then now you were just like, okay, when you first started in 2015, did you were you still full time, or how did you make the transition?
Back then, I was working at Duncanville High School, teaching Algebra 2 and math models, and then as a side, I guess you could say, as a side gig, right? I had started Inc. Tutoring at that time before we moved to Inc. Education, changed our name. Which Inc. Tutoring back then was really a tutoring brand that tutored students from kindergarten to doctorate level in STEM subjects, test preps, English, reading, writing, and foreign languages. Migrating over to Inc. Education, now not only do we do that, but we're an education company, right? We do training, we do professional development, we do workshops, we do resume reviews and writing. We ghostwrite books for people that want to be authors. We do mentoring services, like we do so much more, financial literacy, like all these things now we do that we had to migrate over to an education company. And so being that said, I kind of was bobbing and weaving through my career, my next couple of years, going in and out of entrepreneurship, right? Like working at this school, entrepreneur at night. Working at this school, entrepreneurship at night. Leaving the school, full-time entrepreneurship. Coming back to working at this school and then doing entrepreneurship again. So, when you're in and out of entrepreneurship like that, you get knowledge, right, that you didn't have before, and you coagulate all that knowledge together to build and be your first investor, right? Because you don't always want to lean on Series A, right, or whatever you're trying to do with raising money. They always say even the best of the people that raise money and that have the unicorn companies always say it's really best to just bootstrap, right? You need to bootstrap from the ground up and try to pick up your shoestrings along the way. And that's just what I did, right? Our organization has always been in the black. We've never been in the red. We've never been in a lot of debt, if almost any debt. We've never been in a situation where we had to close up shop. The pandemic was a blessing and a curse at the same time. We gained clientele and gained more students, but we also lost students and lost clients because of the whole test prep situation. And of course, if you knew anything about what happened there, right, the schools and universities started to drop the test, the SAT and ACT, right? They're like, well, we all know there's racially biased tests, right? And we all know that there's issues with it and they need to be abolished. However, in lieu of that, a line of our business, right, got kind of cut short because folks was leaving that dynamic. But guess what? There's 2 caveats to that. One is you don't need the test to get into the school. 2 is you need the test to get scholarships, right? So people still had to come to us for tutoring to get that done, which is fine. But at the end of the day, that's kind of how I intertwined all that. And so now, full time, do my thing in Inc. and, other things that I'm doing, just kind of still creating an impact.
Yeah, no, that's impressive. I mean, going back to the resume piece of it, so many people like being in even in the career space, right? Folks need help with resumes, right? And all these essential skills. And it's great that you've been able to identify those needs to help people. And that, I mean, that says a lot.
I mean, people needed it. Think about what happened in the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
They lost so many jobs.
Yeah.
And people was like, yo, where am I going to find my next job at?
Yeah, right.
Right? Or where am I going to find my next thing at? And their resume wasn't ready for the dynamic of what was to come, right? It's like, okay, cool. I want to be I want to be an engineer. I want to be an accountant. I want to be whatever job. I want to get this internship. But your resume doesn't reflect that, though.
So this is actually got me thinking. So what about going back to? I'm assuming you're doing K-12, right?
Yeah, K to doctorate, but yeah,
the K to doctorate, right? Mm-hmm. So what type of preparation at an early age, around like maybe ninth or middle school, are you helping prepare these students for college, right? And helping helping shape, like STEM. STEM is an important, especially just a unique thing to get students exposed to technology, mathematics, engineering, all these roles that can really skyrocket their careers if they choose to go down that career path.
Right. So, I mean, couple things. One is we engage in parental education too, right? Like people that be like, hey, I want my kid to do this. I want my kid to be, to go to school and graduate, to go to a great college, et cetera, et cetera. But the profile of your student doesn't speak to that. And what I mean by that is your kid's not taking the right classes to get into these universities. You want to go to UT, you want to go to Carnegie Mellon, you want to go to Yale, Harvard, Stanford, Howard, MIT. Cornell, MIT, Caltech, all that, even the Naval Academy, Air Force Academy, all that. Your kid doesn't speak to that, right? And sometimes you got to let our parents know we're real truthful about what we do, like whether or not it's going to hurt your feelings or not, we're going to say it because it needs to be said. And you need to prepare your kid, right? So when they're trying to get here, our job is to educate the parents on what classes should your kids be taking from 9th to 12th or from 7th grade or 6th grade all the way up till they graduate high school, right? To get into college. What tests should they be taking? A lot of folks are not familiar with the 2-1-2 model, which means you take the ACT or SAT twice your sophomore year, once your junior year, twice your senior year to make sure that they're ready for school. And what I mean by that is you've had enough iterations of taking that exam to where you have the score you want. You're able to super score if you're in the ACT, right, and get the best score for all sections. You're able to then, if you needed to redo essays, you can redo essays. Like you have all these chances now because you started early to get to the point you want to. If you got a 23 first time, you got an 18 first time, cool. The next year you take it or the next time you take it that year, you can move up about 4 or 5 points. Then you take it again, you can move up another 5 points. Then you take it again, you're good. The last year, you graduate, get scholarships, you don't have to pay for school. So we got to tell them that. We also got to tell them, your kid's been taking regular classes this whole time. Senior year, now you want to give them a pre-AP and AP classes. It's the wrong time to do it. You should have been having your kids take pre-AP classes 8th grade year. Pre-AP Algebra 1. They should be taking Algebra 8th grade year. They should be. Not all people do it, but 8th grade they should be. And then they move along to taking their class, the right level of class. We have to inform them on that, right? So that's the first thing. Second thing is mentoring these kids as big brothers and big sisters about where they're supposed to be in their academic careers. What do they want to do when they get out and graduate? How that's gonna materialize to a career path, right?
Right.
And then from there, we're taking that piece on to, okay, cool. What kind of support systems do you need? You need community. You need tutoring. You need mentoring. You need academic. You need spiritual. All that. Mental, right? Mental health is huge now, especially for Black men, right?
Yeah.
So all that together is where we kind of align ourselves with those students, because we're not a normal tutoring brand. We're not a normal education company. We don't just be like, hey, we're going to tutor you and you out the door. Our approach is holistic in nature. It's a 360-degree approach, which means that we get to learn the parent and the students first, deep relationships, right? Then we include different stakeholders in that process. So parents, teachers, counselors, students, the team is on one page academically and pedagogically. We mentor those students and we provide them back end support when the tutoring is completed. And that means that now they're not a number, they're a community member, they're our little brother, little sister. And that's how we build a dynamic. I got a girl right now at PV that I've been tutoring since 8th grade, and she's now a senior. Her mom's like, we will not let you go.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of alignments and that kind of relationships that we build, and that's what's important.
Right. And you could say you got me thinking about when I do have kids, getting them aligned with a program like yours.
Important.
To kind of set them up, especially if you want them to go to, a prestigious school, or just setting up in general for success. Because if I when I was in school, like, I didn't get exposed to none of that. I mean, I knew I wanted to go to college, but I didn't know what courses to take, right? I didn't know about what, like you said, 2-on-2.
2-on-2, yeah.
I didn't know any of that, right? And I got left behind the 8 ball because I had to take, like, I think I tested low in math or something like that, and I had to take, like, one part of math, like, starting freshman year. It was like algebra 1A, then I had to take algebra 1B or something like that.
I know what you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, so I was behind, right?
Yeah. You probably had to. You tried to take the TSI or something like that, or when you get into a school and it's like you haven't taken the normal pathway, they will either put you in a developmental class or they'll put you in another math to get up to where you're supposed to be for your major.
Yeah,
and that's what happens freshman year normally.
I'm originally from Florida, so we had to take the FCAT too. So I think I tested low and I had to do intensive reading as well. That was,
I mean, but at least you did what you needed to do.
I did what I needed to do, right? I started reading a lot, but it's just funny that
you got to. Yeah.
But there's more. There's children that were in worse situations, right? I mean, I had great parents and all that stuff. It's just, again, they don't know what they don't know, right? And so it's important to educate the parent as well, to provide them with those right resources.
Exactly. And a lot of the students, they don't have an opportunity to not only get the resources, but how I want to say, they don't get represented well, like in school, right? They need representation. We had an event about a week and a half ago, and I was speaking to a parent. I was like, they're like, yeah, we need help in these couple subjects, da-da-da-da. And she was like, but you know what's crazy? And I was like, what? She was like, my son never get a chance to see people that look like him in the classroom or at the teacher level. And he feels like he alone, right? He feels like he has nobody to go to. And I think that it's important for our kids to have representation everywhere they go, because it does matter at the end of the day. I can go sit in class and have a teacher who doesn't look like me and learn from them, but then I don't have the same relationship. I can get content, but I have no relationship. But guess what? If I got content and I have relationship and I can identify with you, maybe I want to be alpha, maybe I want to be a noob, right? Like, cool, I can see myself there, right? And I can ask questions and be comfortable with asking those questions. But a lot of the kids out here in H-Town and LA and all that, they don't have representation, and it does matter at the end of the day. So our organization is really tied to the community and that dynamic, right? We have tutors and consultants who are African American. We have Caucasian, Indian, Asian, Hispanic. We represent everybody, but we have to identify with where the world is kind of going, right? When you have a world and a educational system where more than 52% of the teachers in front of the kids are, white Caucasian women, right? You don't ever see we have the 2% black male teacher problem, right? That everybody talks about. There's not enough representation of us in the classroom. Why? I wouldn't say is it, I think it's just a female oriented career. Teaching is primarily dominated by females, period, whether or not you're black or brown or indifferent or otherwise. The thing is this, though. We need more males in the system at large to teach the kids what they need to know and relate it outside the 4 walls where it belongs to their hood. That's the problem. And I think in order for us to get there, we as men have to understand that this ain't a place where, it's education, I ain't gonna make no bread, or I'm not gonna be as successful as I want to be. That ain't the case. I actually made a decent amount of money, in the education system the whole time I was there. But it depends on what you're teaching.
Right.
I'm STEM, so I mean, I was okay. You know what I mean?
I think it's just a persona that teachers don't make a lot of money. I just been hearing that for years.
It's everywhere, right? Yeah. It's like, who says that? Like, I've never said it. I've just said, hey, you can do well, and you can still make a decent amount of money in the education system, whether or not you're teaching, an administrator or counselor, whatever you're doing in the ed space. You can still do well. You just have to choose the right pathway in education to make the money you're trying to make. But it also depends on your lifestyle. Everybody's lifestyle different. You can't try to what they always say, you can't live a nickel lifestyle when you're trying to. I mean, you can't have and do things with a nickel mindset.
Yeah.
We're trying to have $1,000 mindset or $1 million mindset or whatever, right? You have to start small, invest in what you're doing, understand your path and your career, and know how of your why, and then you go from there, and you can, gain the money you're trying to get to. But you have to believe in it and have to know how to get there in your career path. There's no straight line to success. It's always going to be a jagged edge, whether or not you're in a corporate career or whether or not you're in an entrepreneurship career. You're never going to have a straight line to success ever. It's never going to look from here to you.
Yeah, it's always challenges.
Yeah.
And so speaking of challenges, what were some of the challenges you had building ink tutoring to ink education?
So my initial challenge was like, you know how you're trying to build something and you want to market it, right?
Right.
I was never like a marketing person, right? Or a PR person. I fell into that by default when I started like getting better at representing my own organization. You know what I'm saying? Eventually, Black Enterprise invited me to become a contributing writer for the magazine for education and financial literacy stuff, right? And eventually that spun into knowing and understanding how PR works, right? And I'm like, oh, I want to get PR for my company. I can do that. So I just need to just tell my story a certain way, right? And I can make it relevant to whatever's going on in the world to where it should get picked up. The story should get picked up somehow, right? And I just got, like, this past weekend, I just got off of doing my 3rd TED Talk. So I was just like, there's ways to tell your story and different things to where it will make sense, right? But I think that one of the challenges, one was trying to get the word out about the organization initially. And then I was like, okay, let me take some time to think about the how and the why of what I'm doing. Once I understood that, I was able to then articulate my story for the company, right? And then it was about operations. Okay, well, how do we start getting revenue and be profitable to where like our revenue line is not looking like this? It still goes up, but it's more flat line. We want one that looks like this, right? So I remember we were paying the compensation for consultants was more based on percentage, right? Percentage works when you're in this space, but it doesn't work as great as if you have hourly rates for experience. And I think that was a better way to go. When I brought my COO, his name is Clinton Machi. He's out in Aubrey, right, in the Frisco area as well. And so, when we changed the structure of how that's supposed to look from a compensation perspective, and then what that looks like to the profit margin, it made more sense, and the company did better overall. So the challenge was intertwining the formula of charging clientele and customers, to paying them how we're going to pay consultants, right, to what's left, right, for the organization at the end of the day. And all 3 of those kind of came to a head when we figured out what made more sense for the company. And that's why I don't think we were always in the black and never in the red, because we figured out something that actually does work. Most tutoring brands, especially minority owned, fall out pretty quickly. We're probably the longest standing, I would say, brand that does what we do. That's a millennial based organization to this day. And people always ask me, people that been in business longer than us, be asking us for advice on stuff, because I'm like, you're supposed to be the expert. You know what I'm saying? But they ask us because we've done something in tutoring and education that nobody else has done and nobody else is necessarily used to, and people are trying to figure out why it's sustainable, because we figured out something that people ain't figured out.
So why do you think some of those tutoring companies don't last long?
I think one, because a lot of tutoring companies that are private are not ran by true educators. They're ran by business people. Business people don't understand pedagogy. And pedagogy, if you understand how to operate and work with students and know the psychology of students and know how to get content to them, not just say stuff, but deliver content, you'll go a longer pathway. But you have to understand developmentally what those kids are thinking or grown adults are thinking. And also you have to understand the landscape of education. What are the logistics of how, what's the word I want to say? Not corporate stuff, but politics, right? How does politics work in the education system? How do you build a tutoring brand but still understand the why of the operations and the kids that you're impacting? Do you really understand why Johnny doesn't listen on this particular content? Is it because he's ADD or ADHD, or is it because he have Asperger's, or did he autism? Like, if you don't understand education and you try to start an education company, it's eventually going to catch up with you, and you're going to fall out because you're not going to be expert. You're not going to be an expert witness, right? You're not going to be an expert or a subject matter expert on that topic. You know how to build a company, but you don't know the content that you're building a company on. And that's why I think people tend to fail. Now, they also tend to fail quicker because they don't understand the ebbs and flows of education and tutoring, right? Because there's a high season sometimes, there's a low season sometimes, there's a middle season sometimes, there's testing season, there's final season, there's midterms, right? There's like all these different things where tutoring will go up, it'll go down for a second, it'll go up, it'll go down for a second, it'll flatline, it'll go up, it'll go down. Like, people tend to give up when they see things go well, and then things go down. They're like, oh my God, my business is going to fall out. Like, I'm going to die. We have no runway, no revenue. Like, what's going to happen? But you got to stay the course the whole way, right? You got to know your weaknesses and your strengths. You got to know when to go get the bread, and when it's going to come to you, and when you should go to it. And that's for really any organization. You know what I mean? You just have to understand the ebbs and flows. But that's, I think, one of the primary things that why people don't last in the tutoring industry or the education industry, because they just don't understand it. They want to make money, but they don't really understand it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's really important, especially when it comes down to like the pitfalls of running a business, right? Like you in and outs. I'm assuming the slow months are like the summertime. Is that pretty slow for you?
That's one of them. Slow months is the summertime. Also, in the very beginning of school in the fall. August, September, because nobody knows at that time. Nobody has taken a 6 or 9 week exam, and then they haven't had progress reports. Right? When your progress report come out at 3 weeks, though, you should be able to tell Johnny's about to fail that math class, right? Or Johnny's about to fail that English class, and he's sitting there looking at you like, "Yo, Mom, I can't play basketball because no pass, no play." Right? So, okay, but you coming to us then to save your butt. But here's the thing. Most parents are reactive. They're not proactive, right? If we change the mindset of our parents to be more proactive parents and less reactive parents, then you don't have to worry about catching up to the kids in Asia or the kids, wherever, right, that are doing better, right, than us. And people always complain about what's wrong with the system. Well, what's wrong with it starts at home. What are you doing as a parent to get your kid ready first? What are you then doing to make sure that your kid stays on top? Are you checking on their homework? Are you making sure they got all the problems right? Are you making sure they even did all the problems? Are you making sure that they're taking their homework to school? Are you going to the parent-teacher conferences? Are you invested in your kid knowing what financial literacy is? Are you a parent who, rears them in certain ways? Right. Like, it starts at home. The teacher will carry over some of that, right? And be that whatever they're missing, right? That uncle, that mom or dad figure, whatever. But we can't do all of it for you. You got to start that at home. We'll just accelerate that to a point where the kid needs to be, and then we'll go from there.
Nah, that's great. So what do you see the future of Inc. education over the next couple of years?
Man, so Inc. education, I see is going to be definitely growing to more cities. I'm talking about on ground, right? We do tutoring and we do educational services on ground. I mean, in person, and we do it online right now, right? We do a lot of stuff online at this point, right? Last week, we had clients from North Carolina, Louisiana. I just did an ACT class for a Louisiana charter school that's on the side of Grambling State today. We got folk in Houston, like Florida, like all those people came last week because there's a lot going on, struggling, right? So our staff is going to at least triple. I think probably quadruple, I would say at that point. We're going to have, we want to quadruple or quintuple, if you will, revenue, right? We want to eventually be a brand that everybody looks to first, right? We're not a center-based model. We'll never be. People always ask, are you going to franchise it one day at one point? Nah. For what? The model doesn't work. We would license our model out, though. We'll do that. So we might license a model out at that time and say, hey, this is the Inc. way to do it, right?
Right.
Take it to your university, to your high school, to your middle school, whatever, K-12. And then you can do what we do and have the success rate. We have a 95% success rate of our students earning A's and B's in like 55 content areas right now. Who do you know that can beat that? I can't even name anybody that can beat that. Not Sylvan, not Kumar, not Mathlasium, not iLevel, not Huntington, not Gideon. Nobody. So when you have a team that speaks to that and they're super brilliant, like I got brilliant people on my team, bro. Like I'm talking about people that are on our team. They work part-time because they have a full-time job, right? I'm the only one that works in the organization full-time, but I got IT consultants, engineers, instructional coaches, educators, doctors, physicians, attorneys, investment bankers. Like all these different type of professions are within the organization that are primarily millennial that can relate to today's generation and tomorrow's generation now. And I think that makes up for the difference of why we're doing what we do and how we're doing it better than others. We build better relationships. We have better results. We have better follow-up. We have better team. We just need to scale more. And I think the only way for us to scale more, like you said, 5 years, working on some things right now to try and get us to move in a silo of ed tech. And once we kind of move in the ed tech division, I think things will fly off the rip and we'll have a lot more will be worth a lot more per se, right? And we'll be able to impact more. Like I said, Inc. education is not anything that I do is not a money play. Everybody likes bread, right? Everybody wants to be successful and make revenue and all that and one day be a unicorn. But that's not what we do it for. We do it to impact people. And the more people we impact, the better. If I can impact, where we're at over 11,000 now in 5 years, if I can 10x that, right? And we're like at 100,000, we're at 100,000 people or whatever the case may be, then guess what? Man, that's a huge impact. That 100-something thousand people is worth more than whatever money it is. Why? Because I just saw somebody cross that stage. I got a girl right now, man, that just graduated a couple of weeks ago. I had tutored her for GRE and also for her math and science to get into the top nurse anesthesia school. I'm training people to work on people that can die. So it's serious for me. You know what I'm saying? I'm not going to train you and tutor you and have you out here killing people.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like
we don't want that.
You know what I'm saying?
You're right.
And that's just sword, man. She's an AKA, man. So it's like, we take what we do seriously because we train tomorrow's leaders, and we don't accept failure, and we don't accept mistakes. And I think that's what makes us different.
No, that's a great way to put it. I mean, being able to find top tier talent, right, is absolutely important. I'm assuming, well, what is your process like to find these type of tutors?
Yeah, so kind of funny you asked that too. I remember one day I was on LinkedIn and a woman hit me up. She was like, I heard about your organization. And I'm like, oh, really? What's up? And she was like, I heard y'all hire people differently. And I'm like, okay, cool. Where you get this from? Like, you know what I mean? Like, where you get your research? Yeah. So she was the head of the VP of actually HR at I want to say it was Methodist. It was a hospital system. I was like, ooh, big exec. Okay, cool. How you find us, right? And so she was like, man, I just want to have coffee with you because I just want to know kind of what y'all do, like what's your process. We kind of have, I guess we're like the, what are they? Like kind of like the Harvard of tutoring brands, right? Like, and when it comes private tutoring brands, when it comes to who we hire, we don't do much, if at all, outside hiring. And what I mean by that is we don't be like, hey, we're going to go to Career Builder and just find somebody off the rip and we're going to have them in our organization tomorrow. Doesn't work like that. Anybody that comes to our organization first is recommended by an executive of the organization or a C-level suite member or somebody that's a bigger manager within our organization. So you can't come in unless you're recommended, right, to the team, period. Now, if you're trying to be in leadership, it's a different story. Only C-level execs get to do that. But if you're trying to be a consultant, you come in, you are only able to come in if you're recommended by somebody else. Once you're recommended by somebody else, then you have an interview process. And once the interview process is done, and HR, we have an HR team in North Carolina. Once they clear that and everything is cool, then we'll hire you on the team and they figure out what that rate's going to be. And then we go move forward from there. But you don't just come in and be like, I'm in Ink. Nah. If you part of Ink Education and folks know the brand already, they already know that they're going to have somebody that's quality, or they know that they have the best, one of the two. Oftentimes people will come out one right before I'm on my way up here to the studio today. A woman had chose to tutor somebody, to get a tutor, right? We had talked already and it was like, cool. I think we're a little bit too expensive or whatever, but I was like, okay, cool. If you found somebody, great. Let me know if you need us in the future, whatever. She hit me up today. I was like, hey, do you mind, maybe flexing on the pricing, but we still want you guys. And it's like, of course, right? Not to be funny, but I know that people that don't choose us to begin with are always going to come back. Why? Because we're the best at what we do. You cannot find somebody out here better. You just can't. I've looked. You know what I'm saying? I'm a whole educator. I already know the platform. And so when you have that type of confidence and you exude that type of sort of reputation, then it speaks for itself. I ain't gotta say nothing. You know what I'm saying? Remember back in the day, they used to be like, Google me, right?
Yeah, Google.
I don't need to speak no more.
Well, yeah,
just look it up.
If people Google you, your brand comes up. The J Veal Brand.
Mm-hmm. And the Ink one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's the J Veal Brand?
Yeah. So the J Veal Brand is an organization I started in the middle of 2018. It kind of light work then, more heavy in earlier 2020, and late 2019, where it is a brand that consists of speaking engagements, consulting, whether it be educational consulting or credit consulting. We do credit analysis, right? And what we call AU servicing. And AU servicing is authorized user servicing, which is basically putting consumers, right, on credit cards, so they're able to gain the credit years, right? Age, as they call it in the credit industry, profile, right, if you will, the history and things like that, right? And they're able to utilize that to go get houses, go buy cars, go get houses and apartments and all that, right? So it's really to help people achieve dreams. Again, it's about impact. It ain't about nothing else but impact, right? So that, and then also professional development type things. And so all those in one is kind of what the J Veal Brand does at large, right? So if I'm going out there speaking about certain topics, I'm going out there doing professional development workshops on certain topics, I'm consulting, or I'm doing credit, financial literacy type items. Matter of fact, I got to do a workshop next week to a Jack and Jill organization about credit and financial literacy. So all that stuff is for the community.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah. I mean, are you still doing your own PR? Or
I am.
Wow, man, you do a great job.
Bruh, I ain't hired no PR. Matter of fact, I think the last time I even hired anybody in PR, bruh, was like 5-6 years ago. Everybody asked me that. I got people that in PR be like, yo, how you get all the PR? And I'm in PR. Bruh, I just do what I do.
Yeah, man, your brand is incredible. Like, I'm looking at it like, wow, man, this is like very well branded. Like, you have a team or something, man. The way it's just like you said, so. Google you, like we really Google you. It's just the way everything's organized, the articles, the Forbes stuff. It just all stands out.
And I'm like, okay, they're like, how do you move a brand to be in Forbes, Entrepreneur Magazine, NBC, Black Enterprise, Business Insider, and all these other high level platforms without an agent? So it takes practice. It takes knowing your story well. It takes crafting your story around something that matters. It takes you knowing how to articulate your brand and pose it to PR outlets, right, that understand your brand. Because some don't understand. Now, when we made Ebony Magazine podcast, one of my, she's Delta, one of my, I got to call her now my homegirl because she's cool. And we had a really great conversation. But I had always wondered, I'm like, why is it that other outlets will cover us, but I find like the BIPOC ones don't? What's up with that? You know what I'm saying? And you just have to really look at well, what are they really covering? What do they really care about?
Right.
And I feel like most outlets, I feel like education is like on the tail bottom list of the importance. But it should be the top level of importance. We got a whole situation right now where Biden is trying to figure out what's up with this student debt, with these student loans. I ain't got no student loans. For those that got them, I feel for you. But you know what I'm saying? I'm in a situation where we're all in a situation now where it's like, okay, what's he gonna do with these student loans? Is he gonna forgive them? Is it gonna be 20,000? Is it gonna be 10,000? Like, what is it gonna be? Right? We're on our pins and needles right now because the decision's gonna be made soon, right? But we also had the pandemic where education became huge, huge topic outside of Jesus, right? And George Floyd and everything else that was going on. Education was next thing of importance. You got to catch the wave when you can, and that's where PR, pitching your story, becomes important.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you consult on that?
Or I get asked that sometimes. I can, but I just don't do it often. You know what I'm saying? I feel like I probably should create an agency at some point doing it because I'm well versed at it. I don't know all the ins and outs of PR because I didn't major in it, obviously, right? I didn't major in PR. I didn't major in public relations or communications, right? But I know things that other people probably don't know. You know what I'm saying? That's able to get me in different places that maybe people may not get into, right? But I can't push you into how to get verified, right? I can't push you in how to get your Google Pixel and your Wikipedia and all that stuff set up because that's not what I do. I got to ask somebody else how to do that now.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But the baseline PR to create stories, I can tell people how to craft their story to where it will probably get picked up. But it depends on what's relevant at the time and how you pitch. You know what I'm saying?
So, yeah. No, that's great.
Yeah.
I always conclude with this. So what advice would you give other entrepreneurs?
Man, there's a lot out there. I say, one, do not give up. The journey is hard. Be strong, but failure is okay, right? You won't learn and know much if you don't fail and fail. You won't know much if you don't fail often, fast enough, right? Failure is okay. People are always afraid, damn, if I go to be an entrepreneur, I'm gonna fail. Cause now it's like entrepreneurship is like like the golden key or something, right? You know what I'm saying? Like nobody was interested in entrepreneurship before the past 4 years. Then all of a sudden it became a thing, right? Like, man, and now people be looking at people down. Like if you got a normal job, like you suck because you're not an entrepreneur. Like, you know what I'm saying? But people, It's okay to have a 9-to-5. It's okay to be an entrepreneur fully. It's okay to mix the both, mix them up. But I say you gotta fail enough times to where you can learn from those mistakes and tell other people what to do with that, right? I would also tell them, it's not for the weak. Don't try to be an entrepreneur if you're not ready. Don't try to be an entrepreneur if you think that you want to be one, but you ain't real about it. You ain't really about it though. Like you ain't getting up in these streets at 3 a.m., 4 a.m., ain't going to sleep. You ain't seen your friends in like 3 weeks, 5 months. Like you don't know entrepreneurship till you really been through the wire, right? You ain't been sitting there bootstrapping your money, or raising capital or losing sleep, don't eat for 3 or 4 days. Like there's a lot of things that people do in this space that not everybody can do consistently. So it ain't for the weak. And if you ain't about that life, then stick to your 9-to-5 and call it a day. I would also say, it's fun. Keep it fun, right? You will, there are days you're going to be like, this sucks. There are days you're going to be like, this is the lick. Right? There's days you're going to be like, fam, I just got 2 contracts, right? Like I get this amount of money, whatever, right? I can pay my team, right? There's days you're going to be like probably sad or depressed. There's days you're going to be super crunk, right? There's days you're going to be just chilling. But the cool thing that entrepreneurship does that nobody always talks about is freedom. Freedom of time. You can push your time however you want to, right? Freedom of travel. And if you need to travel somewhere, you go travel. Now, for those that are really early stage, they might not be able to drive and be like, say, fam, I'm just going to walk up and go to Miami for lunch. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or whatever, right? Yeah. You want to work up to that. We want to work up to that. But the point is, the freedom of time is something that you can't get back. time ticks away every second, and you can't get it back. Right? The time we just had in the last 5 minutes, we can't get that time back. It's already passed. So you have to remember why you're doing what you're doing, because you can't get time back. And then lastly, I would say that try to build solid relationships the best way possible so you can get repeat business, but also retain those relationships in ways outside of funding. So massage the relationship good enough to where you become semi-friends or you become semi-colleagues or associates, right? But you're able to hit up one another in different ways, time of need, or I just need to talk, or whatever the case may be. Try to build relationships where it doesn't just center around that. You know what I mean? And I think your journey can get a little bit better, if that makes sense, you know? And if you're going to go into the education space, know your stuff, right? If you're going to try to be an educator, right? But you should know your stuff in whatever industry you're in as an entrepreneur. Know your stuff, know your craft, know your audience, know your team, know your know your worth, and keep being hungry for knowledge. Being an educator, being an entrepreneur, being an edupreneur, any type of business owner, you can't just stop and be like, I think I know everything. Nah. You can read more books out there to get your 10,000 hours of expertise. You can always read more books and get more knowledge, because even Jesus is the only one that know everything. So I say just get your knowledge game up and keep reading and keep being a steward of educating yourself. That's it.
Awesome. Well, Jay, appreciate it.
For sure. I appreciate you bringing me on. For anybody that does want to connect, feel free to hit me up. My IG is at the Top Tutor, THE Top Tutor, or Inc. Education, or the Veal Brand, or Black Tutors of Social Media. I know we didn't get a chance to talk about the nonprofit, but you can hit me up there as well on LinkedIn, Facebook, all that stuff. You'll find me everywhere.
Jay, appreciate it.
For sure. Appreciate it.